and welcome again to the program of the Australian Calabrese Cultural Association, Sono Calabresi, which is a program of conversations with people of Calabrese origin or descent, aimed at letting the community have an insight into their experiences in Australia, and designed to redress the negative image that's often portrayed in the media about the Calabrese. We invite anyone who's interested to participate, and as I've said on previous occasions, contact us via the email or the web page and give us your contact details, and we'd be delighted to have you on the program. Tonight's guest is Sam Sposato, who is a company director. And welcome, Sam, and thank you for agreeing to participate in the interview. Briefly, Sam, you were born in Calabria?
Yes.
Whereabouts?
I was born in Sambiase, which is now La Mezzia Terme, provincia di Catanzaro.
Right. And any siblings, brothers and sisters?
I've got 3 boys.
Yeah.
I've got 11 grandchildren.
Right.
And 5 great-great-grandchildren.
You've been a great producer, Sam.
I definitely have.
And your parents, what did they do in Italy?
My father, in 1953, he was actually we had a bit of a farm in Calabria. There was no work, so he migrated to Australia on his own in 1953. And we followed with me and my 2 sisters and my mother in 1955.
Right. And all right. And when, so you were, there was an absence of what, 3 years between your father coming to Australia and the rest of the family joining you? 2 years, yeah.
He had to, you know, he had to put a deposit on a house.
Yeah.
So when we arrived here, we were sharing a house with another paisano.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's why the reason we started 2 years behind.
Yeah. And whereabouts did your father live?
We lived in Errol Street in North Melbourne.
Right.
Right near the clock tower.
Oh, right. Very nice. And obviously, what sort of work did your father do here in...
My father worked for the rail. Most of the time he was in Australia, he worked for the railway in Newport. They were actually building new trains.
Right. And you, did you go to school here?
No, I went to night school, and I went to, when I started working, I done a course through the work that I was doing it.
Yeah. And it was night school to learn the language or to learn some skill?
No, it was night school to learn a trade, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what trade?
When I first came here, I was lucky enough to, well, I met an Australian girl, and in those days, you did not marry outside. What are they saying? Boy and the girls from your town.
Yeah.
But I met an Australian girl. I was only 16, and we got married at 20. And there was something that was not done those days.
Right.
My parents would not come to the wedding. Yeah. Because she was an Australian girl.
Yeah. So how old were you when you landed in Australia?
16.
16. So
Yeah.
you'd have a very clear recollection of life in Calabria.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And in terms, and you obviously would have had friends in Calabria that you left behind when you came here.
I've left at the time, but as you know, I go back every 12 months, every year.
Yeah.
And there's not many of them left. They've gone. They migrated to America, to Canada, to the States, to Europe. It's very, very few friends left from the old days. But I've made a lot of friends now since I go back every year.
But when you arrived in Australia, how did you cope? In the sense that you didn't have friends here.
It was hard. We were picked on every day.
Yeah.
It was only a thing. Either you fought, or you're gonna get bashed every day because you were a tiger, you were a wog, Look, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all.
It wasn't as popular to be Italian or Calabrese in 1955 as it is now, was it?
Oh God, no. Being Italian was bad enough. Being Calabrese was a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah.
I used to be ashamed. Not ashamed, but I used to be embarrassed to tell people I'm from Calabria because of the stigma was attached. Today, it's actually the moda to be Calabrese, to be Italians.
Why did you feel ashamed? Because, did you believe in the
Because
stigma?
all you hear in the newspaper was for Calabria, it's a drangheta, it's a marijuana, it's a drug. You know, it was nothing in the newspaper good about Calabria. Everything was bad.
And did you find that to be that attitude towards you, both at night school and when you started work on the job as well?
It wasn't. Gradually things improved, but very, very slowly. But when I went to school, yes. If I went to a swimming pool, if I went to my mother used to cut my lunch.
Yeah.
Our lunch was two big, thick bread. I was picked on because look at the bloody sandwiches you walks eat. Yeah. You know, I used to go swimming, and the bathers, the dogs we had were different. Yeah. So we would get picked on just about every aspect of life.
And where did you go to work?
I went to work with Kraft Foods, which is actually a division of National Dairies. It's an American firm. And I spent there about 35 years there. In
the one job?
I started on a pallet and I finished up doing the production superintendent of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah. They were fantastic to me. They were very good. I sent them to school.
And you married young. You said you married.
I married at 20.
At 20.
My wife was 19, and we're still married. We're 60 years married this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And you've told us about your kids. Now, you mentioned that you had problems because you decided to marry your wife. Mm-hmm. What I want you to tell us, if you can, in terms of social activities, when you arrived here, with whom did you socialise?
Mainly mainly a group of Italian kids.
Yeah.
We used to congregate like now. You know, you get your little gangs now. Yeah. We had a little gang to protect ourselves. We had to go out in groups of 7 or 8 together. Otherwise, you got picked and you get bashed.
Yeah. Where did you meet your wife?
She was going out with my friend, to be honest. He lost his license.
Right.
And they asked me to drive him around.
Right.
Well, what happens if we fell in love?
There you go.
We're still friends. We're still friends now.
But I bet he hasn't asked you to drive him around anymore.
No, not anymore. No, he still comes to the club.
Yeah, that's good. And tell me, well, you obviously would have had to mingle with your wife's family and her friends.
Well, I cannot understand. You know how we Italians, especially Calabrese, we live in each other's pocket.
Yeah.
My sisters, my cousin, my wife, she didn't know. I comprehend. They could not, first cousins, they see them once a year, once or twice a year. To me, it was absolutely, foreign. It was, I could not understand it.
Yeah.
And she had to get used to the fact that we are a very united family, but she loves it. She did love it. Yeah. And so did my parents. Once I got married, she was in, I was out. I couldn't do anything right. She could do everything right.
Yeah. You mentioned your parents were opposed to your marriage.
Yes.
What about your wife's parents? Were they opposed to it too or not?
Not as much. They took me in. I used to actually live with my wife's parents before we got married. It was still, maybe I wasn't good enough still, but no, they made me welcome.
Yeah, yeah. And how did you deal with the fact that your parents wouldn't accept your future wife?
Well, I was very hurt. As I say, I had to move out. I moved out at 20 years old. I moved out the house, which was, in those days, it wasn't done.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was very hurt.
And what about your brothers and sisters? How did they?
I only got two sisters.
Yeah.
My two sisters were were behind my parents' back. They come and see me, and we used to go out together. They were not against. They didn't like it, but they were not against.
Right. And if you can recall, when you arrived in Australia, if you had to compare life in Australia with life in Calabria, what was the biggest difference that you can recall?
I recall it's the loneliness in Australia. It's in Calabria, you used to go out every night. You used to go there every day after school. You get in the piazza and you mix with your friends. Here, during the week, you could come home and you sit down, and if when there was a television, you watch a bit of television, or you go next door to watch a bit of telly. And only Saturday and Sunday we used to get together and create havoc.
Yeah. Well, where did you live after you were married?
First, I lived in my parents' house for about 5-6 months, and then I moved with my parents. My parents actually raised my first two kids.
Right.
My mother, my first one speaks Calabrese, not Italian.
Right.
He speaks Calabrese because my mother was looking after him. Well, me and my wife were working in the same place. We were working in Lucky. But she used to take him to school. She used to feed him. She used to bath him. She used to talk to him in Calabrese. So the first and second, we lived with my mother for about 10 years. So my first and second kid, they actually talk a little bit. The last one, we moved out, house on our own. He doesn't speak a word of Calabrese. But he's the most Calabrese of them all.
Is he?
He's fiercely Calabrese.
Yeah.
He's got 5 kids, yeah. And we went back to Italy with all of them last year. And the kids took Italian name. One's called Bruno. The other is George. They're hiding.
Yeah.
And
that's wonderful. And in fact, the loss of the language when the grandparents aren't involved
exactly
has been recorded. Even in Canada, for example, yeah. They've done studies where they show that those families where there's a close relationship between the grandparents and the grandchildren are more likely to retain their language, whether it's Calabrese, Hebrew or whatever, than when there isn't. And the other thing that they found is that, in fact, the younger generation now wants to reclaim the language. So in Canada, they've got programs where they can actually go and learn the language of their grandparents. And it's interesting that your own experience verifies that. Your first 2 children, as you say, speak Calabrese, but your third child doesn't. Yeah.
Exactly right.
And why do you think that you say that the third child is the most Calabrese of them all? Why do you think that is so?
I don't know. I do not. But he's more family oriented. He's here every second day, which he shouldn't be. Should I say that? But he's go to my sister's place. His cousins. It's more. He must have it in his blood. But he's more Calabrese than, although he doesn't speak the language, he's more Calabrese than the other.
Yeah. All right. And you mentioned you mentioned that you worked for 35 years, and so I take it you retired from.
I retired from craft because we actually we had problem with the unions. We had a factory in Port Melbourne, which we had 7 unions in there, and you couldn't do anything without losing 3 days' work before they agree on what. If you had to put a nail in the wall, they had to agree, and it took a couple of days to get a. So we moved the factory from Port Melbourne. We went to Strathmore in the country.
Right.
With agreement, only 1 union. So we built a factory down there. I went there and I took a bunch of workers from here to train the people in Strait Merton. And I stayed there for 6 months, and I used to come home a weekend, and it was enough for me. I was 55, and they offered me a package, and I took it.
Yeah. But you didn't stop work though, did you?
No, I did. Well, for 2 years I did. I played golf every day for 2 years. Then I got sick of playing golf.
Then you got bored.
And I got bored. And my friend, I got a mate that he was in the building trade, and he said, "Why don't we form a company and we build some houses?" So we did. We bought some land in Carnley, which is it's here in Melbourne. We bought a few blocks of land, and for 10 years we must have built a couple of hundred houses. And then I got sick of it again. I decided to go back to Calabresi Club, retire and go back to Calabresi Club. 2 years in the Calabresi Club, my son comes up and he says, "Dad, I want to form a transport company." So we set up a transport company. And I worked for them for about 2 or 3 years. I don't go there. I go there once every 2 or 3 months. I've got my 3 sons running it. And then it's a direct couriers. We got in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, and even in New Zealand. But it goes to show what you can do if you want it, if you really wanted to do it.
And you said all 3 of your children are involved in the company with you.
All my 3 run the company. Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
In fact, one of them lives in Queensland, and he comes down here for 4 days a fortnight. But he does all the work from home. He does all the payrolls and does everything from home.
Yeah.
One looks after sales, and one looks after the drivers.
And you look after all of them.
Hey?
And you look after all of them.
I don't look after them at all. I have to say, I don't go there. I've been there for a couple of months now. They're capable. They're doing it. So I'm enjoying retirement.
Yeah. You mentioned the Calabresi Club. How did you get involved in the Calabresi Club?
1984.
Yeah.
The Calabresi Club was in trouble. They didn't have a club. We had an association, but we did not have a land. We did not have we were gypsies. We were going from town hall to town hall to make 2 or 3 functions a year. And a couple of religious, that was formed in 1970. For 14 years, they were gypsies. A friend came and said, "We need somebody to help with the committee of the Calabresi Club." 1982, I think it was. So they roped me into the committee. Within 2 years, we decided to build our own building in Bulla. The committee previous had the thing to buy a land. They bought a land in 27 acres in Tullamarine for $50,000 those days, which was very, very lucky. And we started building. So I was, within a year, I was made the president of the club. 1984 to 1988, we built the Sad House, you know, you've seen it. For 4 years, I resigned from being the president in 1990. First time.
Yeah. Tell me, why did they choose to go to Bulla? Was it just that land was cheaper there?
Well, it was a chaos. Some people people from Reservoir, they wanted in Reservoir. People from Moonee Ponds, they wanted in Moonee Ponds. Brunswick, they couldn't agree. They were actually, one day, they had bloody all in. Because they could not agree where to. Everybody wanted in the backyard. So the thing prevailed, and they decided to buy this land. They used to go there and make picnics, and we had a shed with the tractor, and it was all right until we made a bit of money and we decided to build the building there.
So Bulla was chosen because it was distant from all the groups, whether they lived in Reservoir, Brunswick, or Moonee.
That's right. That's right.
And did many people go out to Bulla in the early days? The
first years that we couldn't fit them in. When we did the opening, we had to do a Saturday and Sunday because we could not fit everybody in.
And what was the attraction, do you think?
My mother's generation, my sisters, they didn't speak English. They work in a factory all week. Saturday and Sunday, the thing to go to the Calabria club, to go to the Gula and speak the language, dance a tarantella, eat pasta, talk their own language for the whole 2 days. It was the best thing. Today the Calabria club, maybe it's not needed by the Calabrese, but in those days, it was a lifesaver.
Yeah, but I want to ask you, because the Calabria Club is only one of the clubs, isn't it, that it is based on the Calabrese. For example, there's the Gaulonia Social...
we got the association, we got the Federation of Calabrese Club. It's got the Reggio Calabria Club, the Dalia Nova, it's got
Philadelphia.
8 or 9 clubs.
But my point is, why do you think that instead of everyone agreeing to form one body, one club, to which everybody could belong, there were these different clubs based on what appears to be regional loyalties?
It was pretty much the same thing as everybody wanted the building in the backyard. Everybody wanted to be the president. Everybody wanted to have the glory. Right. And if we amalgamate, can only be one person, what are the other 6 going to do?
And so you really think that it's the fact that people thought that it was important to be seen?
Of course.
Really?
And then you can't blame them. You can't blame them. You know, all of a sudden you feel important, and you come from a rural country, being in Calabria, and you've done something here, and you become somebody, and all of a sudden you're going to be taken away from you.
That might, because as I understand it, the need that these clubs met was the need for people to socialise with people of their own background.
Exactly.
And that was about the extent of it, except that there would be religious observances as well. La processione da Madonna and whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there wasn't any perceived need to actually advocate for the community, as I see it. Would you agree with that?
Can you say?
Yeah. Other than providing the opportunity for people to meet socially,
right.
From what I've read, none of these clubs actually try to do anything to redress the negative stereotype that you mentioned.
Exactly right.
Exactly. Yeah. So why do you think that was?
I'm all right, Jack.
Yeah. Do you think that was the only reason, or do you think perhaps that there was this concern that, we're inferior, in fact, and we can't?
I think if you're getting bashed and pushed all your life, you try to get what do you call it? You start to believe a little bit that you're not
right.
as good as it.
Right. Which isn't true.
The reason why,
as your own story evidences,
the reason why we formed the original idea to form the Federation of the Club Calabrese is to do that, to speak with one word. It was we haven't done much.
No.
But the idea was that when we get attacked by the newspapers, all the negative in the newspaper, Calabria, it's a gold mine. Calabria, it's the best region in the world. The people of Calabria, here it goes, I get emotional.
Well, you're probably preaching to the converted, but I don't want to stop you, but why is it that people don't know about the qualities of Calabria, leaving alone the Calabrese? But
we didn't do our part here.
Yeah.
The Regione Calabria, they didn't care. Well, they did care, but they didn't do it. There's nobody there that can understand what are they sitting on.
Yeah.
They're sitting on a gold mine. It's a best. We got the best country in the world. It's the cheapest. We got the best food in the world, the Mediterranean diet. We got 20 minutes you're in the beach. You got the mountains.
Beaches.
Look, all I've been saying to them, if they could wake up to themselves, Calabria can live on tourism alone. We are trying to promote this third or fourth generation to go back and discover their roots. but it seems to be preaching to deaf people. As I say, I took my wife is Australian. My kids are all born here. Their wives are all Australians. I took 15 of the first son. We went with the first son and my grandchildren, 15 of us 2 years ago. Last year, I took the second son. Again, and I show them the house I was born, and I can see that I'm actually waking up the Calabresi in them, you know.
Mm. Yeah, but so the difficulty is, how can the regional government be convinced that it's in the interests of Calabria to actually have not just people in Australia of Calabrese origin, but people of Calabrese origin all over the world to reconnect with Calabria? Because it seems to me that although a lot of the politicians over there express positive statements about that we want the young people to come over, they don't actually do much.
No, they don't.
No.
It's what I've been trying to, as I say, when I go back every year, it's what I preach. They got a resource all over the world that Calabria could live on that. But they got to wake up to themselves. Even the people, my cousin, when I talk to my cousin in the town, I tell them that the mentality's got to change. The bloke who comes from America, from Canada, from Australia, is not stupid. You can only tag him once, then he'll wake up.
Yeah.
I go to my town one year, a little example, and I got a car at the airport, target Milano. I arrive in the town. Before I got to my uncle's place, I stop at a milk bar. Give me a can of Coke. 3 milliliter. I sit at the front. You come from Milano? No, I don't come from Milano. I come from Australia, but my uncle lives here. Oh, Coca-Cola is not 3,000 liters. It's 1,500. Now, why? They gotta grab. They think that they gotta grab you when they can, but it's not. The bloke doesn't come back.
No.
The hotel's the same. They haven't got the facilities. Now they have. In the last few years, I've seen a completely different change. No, we got the pension in Calabrese. In Zambiasi was nothing. Now we got hotels, we got pensions, and people start to have a little bit more. Yeah. I think we're on the right track.
Yeah. Well,
I honestly can see.
What's interesting though, and you might know, but is the fact that there are people who are now migrating into Italy. So, for example, even in La Mezzia, there's now Chinese restaurants.
Yes. Yes.
Albeit small, a Chinese community, but nevertheless they're going, and maybe that will awaken the locals.
Yes, definitely.
As to how they should treat the thing. Now, obviously, you know Vince Daniele. He's involved with the Calabria Club.
Yes.
As well. When did you meet him for the first time?
Sorry?
When did you first meet Vince Daniele?
Vince Daniele, I met him in about 1980.
Right.
When we first started building the thing, he was the engineer to help us with the drawing of the club.
Right.
And we've been together ever since.
That's good. Now, and because it goes back to the Ragione. You know that Vince Daniele has been the consultore for a long time.
Last 10 years.
Yeah, and you were at the conference in Cosenza last year,
yes,
as I recollect. And if you recall, the president of the province, Iacucci, I think was his name, criticised the consulta because he said it wasn't working in the way it was meant to work. Do you remember that? And I think there's probably truth in what he says, because you've been, as I understand, you've been there as an observer when the consulta has met.
Right.
And from what I've seen, and when we were there together, they don't really think to the future. It's all about what we've done rather than what we can or should be doing. And my question is, why is it that the regional government tolerates that sort of approach from the people that are meant to be advising it as to what the needs of the Calabresi in the various countries are and how they can be met?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. It's ingrained. They got to grab what they can, when they can. They're not in. They're not interested in they're interested in what goes in my pocket.
Yeah.
And we got to change this. As you're aware that they have actually agreed to do a new consulta.
Yeah.
At one stage it was actually, well, now they have agreed to redo it.
Yeah.
They have. I don't know whether Vince mentioned to you, but we have to actually wanted to buy a property in Calabria to build a Casa Calabresi.
Yeah, he mentioned that, which
and I think we've been having few with Canada, with Argentina. In fact, we got a Zoom meeting on Wednesday with people from FACA in Argentina as well. The money is there. The Europeans community is got the money, but every year the money goes back because there's no projects been done.
But just to follow through, to whom does the European government give the money? Is it to the regional government? Is that how it goes?
No, they invite the regional government to present project.
Right.
To create jobs, to create, those projects, they don't send projects, they don't send those projects, they sit on their desk.
But who's responsible within the region, if you know, for putting up?
They change every year.
Sorry? They
change every year. Now, the new consulta, you met, what's his name last year, he's gone. He's not in consulting anymore.
Which fellow? The
bloke who was Vince's friends.
The one from Switzerland, or?
No, the bloke from the bloke in government. Actually,
Orlandino Greco.
Orlandino Greco. He's not there anymore. He was going to be the bridge from us to Orlandino Greco. He's gone.
And who's taken his place?
Well, it's a new gentleman now. He's taken his place. In fact, the bloke from Milano, which is Salvatore Tolomeo, he's the president of the Federation dei Clubi Calabresi in Italia. Mm-hmm. He's actually been in touch with it, and he reckons this is the reason why the new consultant is going to get made. I think we might be on the right track.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. But from what we saw last year, it'll still be an uphill battle, I think, because...
Look, for the last 30 years, the consulta, what have they done? They went there every year, as you know, you've seen it, having a few dinners, having a few laughs together. When we pick up and come back home, nothing gets done, nothing at all. Till next year. Yeah, but next year we'll do the same thing again.
But is that the fault of the Regione, or is it the fault of the individuals who comprise the
Regione? The Regione. The problem is with the Regione, because it doesn't matter how many projects you bring there, nothing gets done. I promise you, they come to Australia. We had them here, we had them here many, many times. They promise you when you get to Calabria, they don't even know who you are. Mm. They think so that because we immigrants, mm-hmm. we are people that we don't count. We gotta make sure that they understand that we got brains all over the world. The Calabresi brains all over the world. It's a hell of a lot. Yeah. It's the biggest resource they got.
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a large resource. Of the people that are outside, but
I think there have been a new generation of politicians, because if you look around down there, apart from Orlandino, they were all in the, like our age, my age is 70, 80. Mm. They go with the old ideas, immigrants.
Well, I think it's not just old ideas. I think it's also that they don't actually believe what they say and what they tell us.
A new consulta
Yeah.
they've got to make sure that the new consultori are not people that want to go there for the
Yeah, well,